Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Adam Virant with me. Adam is the Director of Baseball Operations with the Savannah Bananas. Coach Viro is his name, but one thing that I think you're going to hear throughout his journey is if you pursue your passion, doors will open. So, Adam, thanks so much for being on today.
Bill, thanks so much for having me. I'm fired up.
Absolutely. So to start, this is fun for me being in Omaha and you being an Omaha native. You were growing up in Omaha, and as many people know, the home of the College World Series. And at the high school you went to, you guys had a coach and a team come practice there, and a coach made a very distinct comment to you about your hat, and that really got you going. So talk a little about the early days, growing up loving baseball.
Yeah, grew up in Papillion, Nebraska, a little suburb outside of Omaha. And our high school played at a field called Fricky Field in Halleck Park. And during the College World Series, those teams would come into town and they would need practice fields to prepare for the College World Series at Rosenblatt. And fortunately, Fricky was one of the fields that they would use in the rotation. They used Roddy Park Field out in Bellevue West. I think they used West Side as well. But when they would come to Fricky Field, it was a big deal because growing up in the '90s, um, the only time that you would really get to see these out of town baseball players, these teams, these new type of style of baseball is when they'd come to the College World Series. And so, very fortunate when they would come to Fricky Field, it was a big deal. Our whole team would go there. And there was, I think LSU came one year, so Skip Bertman was on that field. Ron Frazier from Miami was on that field. And Ron Polk with Mississippi State came, and that was the moment that had a core moment in my life because Mississippi State, they brought a whole different band of style of baseball, and they had really, really good teams back then. And, they talked differently. They had these accents you never heard of before. And prior to Mississippi State coming, I was watching University of Miami practice, and these guys all the way they wear their uniforms, they looked like superheroes, right? Like uniforms were perfect, their hats were on just perfect, and they would wear their hats just kind of like low on the brim, not the flat bills like the kids wear nowadays, but it would be very professional. And so I started wearing my hat like that. I started emulating these guys because they were my heroes in that moment. And Ron Polk talked to our team at the end of practice, and he said, guys, you can learn a lot from the game. You don't have to be playing. You can learn a lot just by observing. And he's like, and I want to tell you one thing right now about this young man. And he pointed at me and he said, this young man knows how to wear a baseball uniform, and look how he's wearing his ball cap. And that thing stuck with me forever. I've been a Mississippi State Bulldogs fan my entire life, all just because of that comment from Coach Polk.
I love it. So not only did you love baseball, but you were good at baseball, and you end up doing some pre-draft work with the Twins. And through that conversation, you have that opportunity, and then about 2 weeks before a season starts, you get a phone call about a different opportunity. So talk a little bit about that pre-draft with the Twins, and then heading to junior college.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, my dream was to become a baseball player. Again, growing up in Omaha, going to the College World Series, watching the Omaha Royals at Rosenblatt play, and we had a really good high school team. So I identified myself as a baseball player very, very early. I literally could see myself wearing a major league uniform on a major league field, doing what I learned to love. And never really didn't really know the path, but I knew that there were scouts. I knew that there was a draft. But other than that, it was really it was the early days of information. You didn't really know. The internet wasn't around, and which is bizarre to even think about. But we would have these scouts that would come around our circuit, and there was a scout. His name was Joe Lepel. He was the Midwest area scout for the Minnesota Twins. Really, really nice guy, and he followed me quite a bit. We had really good talent in Omaha, and I definitely wasn't the prime talent, but I was pretty good. But he was always kind of around and always asking questions, talking to my parents. And then one day I got a letter in the mail, and it was Minnesota Twins, kind of like little envelope there, and it's from Joel, and it was a big old packet to fill out a pre-draft workout, and I actually got sent. So I filled this whole thing out, and I would love to see that now because I literally had no help from my parents. Nowadays, if somebody gets that letter, they're getting these advisors and all these people to craft the perfect,
Right.
response. I filled it out with a pen or with a pencil, and sent it back. And then I saw Joel at Mr. Lepple at a field later on that weekend, and he was like, "Hey, we want to send you to a pre-draft workout." I had knee surgery at the time, and they wanted to get a closer look, so went through that process. And at that time, I was like, "Huh, I might get drafted," and which was rare back then in Omaha. Guys weren't getting drafted out of high school, and so long and short of it is, never got drafted, but didn't really think anything about it, and I graduated high school, and I didn't have a college to go to. I knew I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Creighton. I wanted to go to University of Nebraska, University of Omaha. Like UNO was available, Bellevue was there, but I saw bigger things for me. But I didn't have my ducks in a row, and played a tournament game at Bellevue West, and there was a Coach Curtis from Fort Scott Junior College in attendance, and watched me play. And he said, "You know what? Hey, we're doing big things down in Fort Scott. If you want to play, we'd love to have you." I'd never heard of Fort Scott. Um, but the one thing that stuck out, and the main reason that I signed to go to Fort Scott, was their uniforms looked like Florida State.
Yeah.
Identical to Florida State with the interlocking F and S. They were sweet. And I was like, you know what? That is a calling for me to follow this path because they have a uniform that I fell in love with at the College World Series. I'm going to go to Fort Scott. And I'm glad I did because had a great 2 years. A lot of guys from Omaha went down there, and we really were kind of the start of a really championship culture that still exists today in Fort Scott.
I love it. Now, sometimes, a person could be frustrated, right? You went from being a top high school player to potentially getting drafted to now I'm not going to, the top schools that I, kind of dreamt of or watched. And on top of that, you show up to Fort Scott and you realize that there are 6 or 7 catchers, and you call your dad and say, "What am I doing?" And talk a little bit about that conversation because I think that's so powerful because someone listening today may not find themselves contemplating being a catcher right in college, but they might sit there and say, "Gosh, I'm in this job and there's 3 or 4 people ahead of me, and I don't know that I could ever get promoted." So talk a little about that in your story.
Yeah. It was the big fish in a little pond
Yeah.
syndrome for me coming from Omaha. And again, we had great baseball players in Omaha, but I kind of stood out a little bit. And so going into Fort Scott, again, I didn't know anything about Fort Scott. I didn't do my research. I just thought that, hey, you know what? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to be the starting catcher, and that's it. And walk in there day one, and there's 5, 6 other catchers. They're all bigger than me. Couple of them had been drafted and were able to kind of re-enroll in college. Um, 2 of them were from Puerto Rico. They didn't even speak English. One of them's name was Ivan Rodriguez, who happened to be like not the Ivan Rodriguez, but I was like, geez, this is not good for me. And I called my father and I said, "Dad, you know what? There's a lot of catchers here. I don't know if I'm going to make the team." And he said to me straight up, he was like, "Okay, well, you have a choice. You can either stick it out and see where it goes, or I'll come pick you up tomorrow."
Mm.
And the beautiful thing about that is he was forcing me to make my own decision in life, right? And so for me, it was merely just a confidence thing. It was more. I had such a high view of myself
Mm.
that I never really had that much competition. I just was very athletic. I could skilled, and I loved the game. I knew the game,
Yeah.
and I was never really pushed.
Mm.
And so getting to Fort Scott and being like, "Oh, geez, I can't just waltz in here." Luckily, I ended up sticking it out, and quite frankly, it ignited a whole nother level of competition that I really needed. And that's really what kind of junior college is for, and even the minor leagues for Major League Baseball is to see what can the best that somebody can become when they're kind of pressure tested. And so this happens everywhere in life, right? And you come out of school, you transfer jobs and you think that, man, you know what, I am the person for this job. And you go in there and you realize, man, there might be 5, 10 other people that are more skilled or advanced than you. And the reality is that that is an opportunity to grow. That's an opportunity to learn something about yourself. And the reality is everybody's in the exact same boat. Everybody's feeling the exact same insecurities and lack of confidence at times. And if you can control your mind, then that is 80% of the battle. Then you go in and you put in the work. And that's what I was fortunate that to do, because my father, allowed me to learn that lesson at a very young age. And I'm glad I followed his advice.
Absolutely. So you stuck it out and you end up becoming the starter, right? So, talk about that as maybe even a confidence boost for you in regards to, you go from, gosh, should I even be here to, by the time season rolls around being, the guy. Talk about that as just a building block for you, in your baseball career at that point.
It was really important for me to earn the starting slot.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't the biggest. I probably wasn't even the best. I had something that the team needed, and by earning it, by not being the biggest kid and with the best metrics or anything like that, showed me something that it doesn't matter about your size, doesn't matter where you came from, that has everything to do with you and your drive. And so that was huge. Like I mentioned, it unlocked a whole nother level of competitiveness, inner drive that to this day, like if I didn't have that at a young age, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I would not have been able to get through some of the experiences and challenges that I've had in life. And so, earning when people achieve things by earning it, it's a really cool learning experience for the human, I think, because you realize, like, if you're telling yourself, no, I can't do this, or man, I don't know if I can do this, and then you achieve it, you're like, wow, what's next?
Yeah.
I just unlocked potential that I didn't realize I had. And it doesn't need to be huge accomplishments. It's small accomplishments. It's every day. And so, so long as you don't put up these obstacles in your way and believe that I can't get over it, so long as you don't do that, you can really achieve anything. I'll stand before you today that I'm not the smartest, I'm not the most intelligent, I don't make the best decisions, but I trust that if I put in the work and if I really go for something that I'm passionate about, I'm going to be the best at it. And I truly believe that.
I love that. And, something I would even just add to what you're mentioning there is, the accomplishment, right? That moment of becoming the starter or the moment of getting the promotion, whatever it is. For me, I always view that as just extra fuel in the tank. And the real confidence comes from me knowing I did all of the right things, right, that I needed to do to put myself in that position, right? I think the common mistake is that we think, ooh, the confidence comes when I get to the goal. And it's like, well, no, the goal itself is great, right? And it's extra fuel in the fire, or it gives me that, one day of extra motivation. But really, it's, well, I look back and I go, man, look at all the work I did to earn, that starting spot. And now, well, gosh, if that's what it took to earn the starting spot, what would I need to do to earn All-American, right? And you kind of start building those blocks.
No doubt. And again, like life is a lifelong journey for the individual. And you're just, there's a reason why we start out crawling and slowly life gives us these challenges and these obstacles to grow. And again, everybody goes through this. Some accelerate faster through it than others, but the reality is the building blocks for your success, my success, anybody's success are identical from a human standpoint. And again, it's the earning piece. Once you realize that, it doesn't always pay off. Hard work doesn't always pay off as far as, oh, I got this thing, I got this job, I got this promotion, whatever it is. But hard work it provides you honesty with yourself.
Yeah.
Did I really truly put in the work to earn that?
Yep.
Did I achieve this because I earned it and I put in the work, or did I get outworked? And that's a whole learning process too, which is not a negative thing; it's a learning thing. And so, Yeah, I wish I would have learned at a much earlier age, but I'm glad I learned it at the age of 17.
You bet. I love it. So, as happens, junior colleges aren't for forever, right? And your head coach gets hired, or one of your coaches gets hired at George Mason. So, talk a little bit about, finishing up in the junior college and then pursuing the next realm or the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ben Fonseca was my assistant coach at Fort Scott. He recently passed away, but he got a job at George Mason University. There's a really famous guy that Kansas City Royal fans will know, Dayton Moore. Dayton Moore was the head coach at a junior college in Kansas, and he got to know my buddy or my coach Ben Fonseca very well. So Dayton Moore and Ben went to George Mason. And so my claim to fame is that Dayton Moore recruited me to go to George Mason and then went on to the Braves and the Royals and won World Series.
Yep.
Um, so I find myself in this situation again, my sophomore summer. I'm playing at Red Oak for the Red Oak Red Sox in Red Oak, Iowa, and I don't have a college to go to. I had great 2 years at Fort Scott, got tons of accolades, didn't get drafted again. Now I thought I was going to get drafted. I probably should have got drafted, but be that as it may. But I find myself in the situation in July, late July, that I hadn't signed anywhere for next year, and I had some offers, K State and Rice and things like that, but nothing really came through. And so when Ben took that job at George Mason, he said, "We have this catcher named Joey Goodwin, and he's supposed to get drafted. And if he signs, you're our guy, and you're going to come in and we're going to roll." So we were kind of waiting. Joey got drafted in the 10th round. We were waiting to see if he signed, and he finally signed. So he signed. They picked up the phone, called me, and literally, I think a week later, my dad and I were in Fairfax, Virginia, at George Mason, and off and running on my new journey in life and baseball.
I love it. Now, as you're playing there, once again, you're having great success, and I'm sure in your head it's like, all right, I got 2 more years. I mean, to put it all out there, right, and see if the major leagues can be my opportunity. And a big game in front of a lot of scouts comes, and we'd love to say it was the picture perfect ending, the walk-off home run and all the things, but there was a little bit of a twist in your story. So talk a little bit about the time at George Mason, but then that ultimate game there.
Yeah, George Mason was great. It was the first big city that I certainly was living on my own at, and so there was like a little bit of an adjustment period. But again, this was that confidence thing, right? And so quickly got through that and became the starting catcher. Again, there was three catchers at George Mason, and one of them, his name is Sean Camp, and Sean Camp was a local high school standout, absolute freak athlete, and he was a catcher, and I was like, man, here we go again, right? Like George Mason kind of got a lot of those local Virginia kids, and they were loyal to them, and a lot of those guys played on that team. And Camp was there, and I'm like, here we go again. Luckily enough, I earned the starting slot, which pushed Sean Camp into the bullpen because he had a really strong arm, which led him to getting drafted, and then he had a 10-year major league career. And
He can thank you for that.
thank you. And so I talked to him about that whenever I have an opportunity to. And I said, you know what, you owe your entire major league career to me, because if I wouldn't have been so good and you would have been so bad, you would have never made it to the big leagues. And he always says, yeah, checks coming, man. Your check's coming in the mail. But
Let him know that the address hasn't been updated. It's you can still send it.
So yeah, had a good time at George Mason. I struggled in school because of the adjustment was tough, but eventually, again, purpose of being there, getting drafted, doing as best I could, and got second team all conference honors behind Brandon Inge, who went on to be a Major League Baseball All Star, and didn't get drafted because that conference tournament we're playing East Carolina, where it's a tight game, 1-1 or 0-0, and super fast kid steals third base, and I go up to throw, and as I launch this throw, my elbow just clips the top of the guy's helmet, and just a shock went through my body, and I knew that this was bad. I tried to stay in the game, and literally the next throw I threw back to the pitcher went about 3 feet, just kind of sputtered, and they came and took me out of there, and they realized I had fractured my what's called a olecranon. It's like the point of your elbow down here, and that was it. That was it. The profound thing about it was um, my identity in that moment was lost, which was weird. I felt it, and so I didn't return back to George Mason. I went home to get healthy, and tried to figure out what was next, and that was tough. That injury, that kind of loss of my identity, and everything that I wrapped myself up into. I mean, that followed me for a long time. I did have another opportunity to join back up with Bellevue University. Got a random phone call, um, and and coach was like, "You have one more year of eligibility if you want to come play for this." I said, "I can't even throw, coach." And he's like, "Get healthy, come on out." And I did that. So 2 years later, I enrolled at Bellevue University. They were winning national championships and going to the regionals and everything like that. And um, I didn't catch because my arm just wasn't really there. But I played outfield and I hit and had a great career. And again, here we are again. We're in the World Series now in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we're fired up. I think we're probably ranked number 2 in the country or number 3, and everything was going right. Everybody was playing at peak performance, including myself. And we're taking infield, outfield before the game, and I'm in right field, and I throw a ball to third base, and it kind of goes offline a little bit, and the coach is yelling at me, and he's like, "Come on, Viro, let's get online." I'm like, "Yeah," and I felt a pop, and it wasn't anything unique because your bones crack from time to time, and it didn't hurt. But what had happened was on that throw, my bone fractured.
Mm.
It did not displace, so that's why I didn't feel anything. And so the next throw, when I came up to throw home, my hand, my bone displaced. My hand turns all the way over,
Mm.
and the bone wasn't sticking out of my my arm, but you can see it kind of looked like it was dislocated. And I walk over to the visitors bullpen and I said, "Hey guys, I know I'm not on your team, but I got to sit down for a second." And then right in that moment, everybody was on me, and that was it, man. That was the break that kind of threw me in a kind of a tailspin about what am I going to do next. But yeah, some trials and tribulations, and but baseball has taught me a lot of things, and the one thing it has taught me is perseverance. It's taught me that. It's taught me that I probably shouldn't wrap up your identity in just one thing, kind of put your eggs in a basket. But yeah, that happened, and I would not trade my amateur career, my baseball career for anything, for what it led me to next down the road.
Yeah. Well, so to highlight what you said, and I think once again, anyone listening has gone through that moment of your identity being tied up into something that you didn't have any control over, right? It could be, hey, you now find yourself being an empty nester parent, right? And your identity was being the mom and dad to this person that was the star baseball player, right? Or it could be in a relationship, it could be in your job, and then you got let go, and all of a sudden you realize, holy cow, like kind of everything that I believed gave me confidence or that I garnished confidence from is no longer something for me. And, that was a wise word that a mentor of mine said was, Phil, your confidence needs to come from who you are and what you're capable of, not what you're doing, right? Because what you're doing is fleeting. It could change at any given moment, whether it's your decision or someone else's. And so that's always stuck with me on, all right, what's giving me my confidence? What's giving me my sense of purpose? Is it an external thing or is it something, that internally, I have an element of control over?
You bring up a really good point about identifying, purpose and self-worth. And I think that my experience is that has been a journey that has been a lifelong journey. And for me, kind of, I don't want to say I was a rudderless ship, but I really didn't have this central purpose. It was wrapped up in what I was doing, right? And or at least I didn't I didn't frame it like that in my head. And so yeah, and I think that your purpose is, a lot. I think I defining what the purpose is really important for people, and not tying it, Phil, to like what you said, to like a job, or kind of like this is what I do. It's more of this is who I am. This is how I'm going to operate. This is how I'm going to treat people. This is what gives me joy and happiness in life. And then I'm going to find a job, or I'm going to find something to do that gives me that energy and that purpose in life, that makes it not feel like a job, and makes it makes me warm inside and helps me lift people up, or whatever it is. And so, for me, I found that later on in life, and I'm glad I found it. And I think that a lot of people maybe never have the opportunity to find it, but I think it's easier to identify than people maybe give it credit for. And so, um, I can share a story about that a little later on in this, but identifying that central purpose is very important in a person's life. It really is, because it'll provide you the North Star to wake up every single day with passion and energy and excitement. And quite frankly, you will be the best version of yourself if you're following a purpose.
I love it. So as baseball and undergrad kind of ends, and I know you said, hey, at George Mason, academics wasn't necessarily the number one thing for me. You end up going the law route, and you say, hey, it's let's go law school. Why not? That's a natural progression. So you go to law school. Talk a little bit about your time in law school, and then taking the internship in New Jersey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was working at Old Chicago down on 132nd and Maple, and I got a job over at Champions Club. I think it's called Champions Run or something like
Yeah.
that. And I was working in the club, and I was like, what are all these younger-ish people coming in playing golf at 2, 3 o'clock? What do they do? Because I want to do that. And, I'd learned that they're business owners and lawyers and doctors and things like that. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to do that, but I want to stay attached to the game. And Jerry Maguire was out in the movie theaters at that time, that glorified sports agents. And I was like, you know what? That's how I'm going to get back into the game. So I enrolled. I took the LSAT. I did horrible because I didn't study on it, and I got into the only school that would accept me, Thomas Cooley Law School, and I went down that road. And so I enrolled in law school up in Lansing, Michigan, for the main purpose to become a sports agent. And while I wasn't the best student up until that point, I was a really fierce competitor. And so law school really kind of stoked that competitive fire in me. And I had to learn some academic skills along the way. I wasn't the best writer from a technical standpoint. I would have to read things 15 times to comprehend them, but I got through, and I graduated with honors, and got out, and had to do an internship as part of my graduation. And my law professor, Professor Hankey, was from Woodbridge, or he worked at a firm in Woodbridge, New Jersey, and said, "Go on out there, get some great experience. These are good people." And it's the first time that I was ever like kind of in the New York City metro area, and I loved it. I loved everything about it, and I made a decision that I'm gonna stay here. And so I took the New York State bar, passed it, and got sworn in, and practiced law for about 10 years. I hated every second of it, except for the paycheck. It just wasn't me. It wasn't me. I never became a sports agent, but I was really happy that I went through the education process and passed that bar, and I learned professional skills that I still use to this day, and I'm able to help people with. But it wasn't for me. And I was crazy enough to be able to walk away from that, and figure the next thing out in my life.
Yeah. Now, while you're practicing, you and your dad are having a conversation. Yeah, I think probably the conversation goes something along the lines of, Dad, like it's a fine job, but I'm just not getting a lot of joy out of it, right? And he suggests, well, what about doing some coaching? And so you hop on Craigslist. Thank God you're still alive, right? Random things happen on Craigslist, but you hop on Craigslist, and you think you're about to get the one of the greatest coaching jobs of all time. So talk a little bit about heading into now getting some coaching experience.
Absolutely. We identified that I love teaching and I love baseball. And so figuring out a coaching job. And he said, go coach youth kids first. You're going to see that you really have an impression on them and an impact. And so I was like, great, let me find a baseball facility here. And so on Craigslist, I found this posting for a baseball coach at an Upper East Side baseball academy. And nothing could sound more cooler or high end or perfect than that. And so reached out and they said, yeah, come on in for an interview. And I take the subway up to 106 and First, get out, and it couldn't have been anything different an illustrious Upper East Side baseball academy. It was a public school gym with dim lighting, with turf that you had to carry in and out after every night. Wasn't in the best area, but it was an opportunity. And the really amazing part about going in for that interview, I got interviewed by a guy who's now one of my best friends, Nate Fish. I walked in a suit. I interviewed at this Upper East Side Baseball Academy, this public school gym, in a full-on suit. There was guys interviewing before me that were just in sweatpants and t-shirts, and I interview with Nate, and he's like, "Okay, so you played Division I baseball, you were a lawyer, and now you want to come teach lessons." He's like, "I feel bad offering you the job, but you can have it." So I'm glad I took it. I took that job, and I saw it as my new path to learn something else about myself. And what I wanted to learn was, could I do this? Was I cut out to be a teacher, a coach, a motivator, an educator? And I'll be honest, that those first few days in the cage were great, but I was really bad at it. I knew that I could hit a baseball, but I couldn't really articulate on how to do it. And that was great. That was the next challenge in life that I was willing to overcome. And that decision to bet on myself, so to say, take that chance and see where it went, has led me to experiences that I can't that are movie writers can't even talk about. But ran baseball programs in New York City for about 11, 12 years, and loved every second of it. Learned so much about life and relationships and motivation, and sure, we won some games, but I learned the important role that a coach brings, and as a teacher and a motivator and a role model brings. And so fantastic that I wound up at the Yorkville Youth Athletic Association, because it taught me so much. It taught me so much.
I love it. Now, two things that I just want to highlight from, what you mentioned there. Someone listening right now is in a similar spot where they're saying, "Gosh, I don't love what I do for work, and I do have this burning passion for X, Y, and Z, right? But I can't leave the money of this, right? How would I make the ends meet on this side?" And the thing I always think is that is going to be hard, right? Like making that switch is going to be hard. It'll probably require a change of lifestyle. It might require you to downsize where you're living. It might require you to sell the car you have and get a car that, maybe you wouldn't desire as much. But it would also be hard to show up every day for the next 30 years of your life to a job that you're not passionate about, right? And so it's like, as they say, you have to choose your hard, right? Do you want the hard of going to something you're not passionate about, or do you want the hard of adjusting your lifestyle, and temporarily that might be really uncomfortable, but you now find a passion behind it. So talk a little bit about that, since you kind of walk through that exact same dilemma and situation.
Yeah. I was fortunate. I didn't have a big mortgage. I didn't have kids, and so my situation was a little easier to walk away from a very large kind of salary security. Um, and I don't look at it as walking away from something I had. I saw it as walking towards something that I wanted to become.
Love that.
So the reality of everything is everything in life takes sacrifice, and there's different levels of sacrifice, and there's different levels of investment and buy-in that you need to individually put in. And for me, I walked away from a life that I no longer wanted, a feeling, this thing that was not me, and it turned me into the authentic I was no longer my authentic self anymore. Um, and so it's hard. It's scary. I was making money, and when I took that job at Yorkville Youth Athletic Association as that baseball coach, I was making $15 an hour, and that was from making real good partner money at a law firm. And I had squandered everything I made from giving it away to friends, helping things, making bad investment ideas or choices. And so I was literally at rock bottom, starting from zero, literally, from not just from a bank account standpoint, but from like a life standpoint. As I saw it, and so it was terrifying. I would not advise anybody to just cold turkey like that. That's why it's really important to identify what that purpose and what that goal is and what your next steps are. I do believe that there is value in making quick and solid decisions or quick decisions, because you can really just kind of talk yourself out of things. They have that, analysis or a paralysis by analysis. And then before you know it, you're 10 years down the road and you didn't take any action. So taking action is a super important thing. And so it was hard, Phil. It was every day I had doubt in my head about whether or not I made the right decision. I was scared if this didn't work out. But the one thing that was keeping me going was the lessons that I learned in junior college about, hey, you know what? You can get through anything. You can achieve anything if you want to. It's up to you. But also the support of my family. My mother and father never once criticized me for the decision. They certainly helped me understand the decision I was making, and they supported it. I can say that sitting here today, that if we asked them, hey, were you happy when Adam decided to walk away and go make $15 an hour? They probably were terrified.
Right.
But I guess they trusted me in some sense, or they trusted that they raised me the right way and that I'd learned the right lessons along the way. And I was opening up to a new me that I wanted to become. And so I think if you're in a job and you're struggling, or if you're in a situation and you're struggling and you don't feel like you should be there, and it's turned you into somebody you don't want to be, you have to take action and make change. And the change can come at different frequencies. It can go fast or it can go slow, but it's up to you. And the longer you prolong your pain, the longer it's going to last, right? And so you have the ability to make change, and you need to fully evaluate your situation, but take action, take swift action, and go all in. And if you do that, then you're going to put yourself in a situation where, hey, the only rule is this has to work type of thing. But be okay if there's going to be setbacks along the way, right? It's not going to always be perfect. And so understanding that change is tough. Change has happened for millions of people, and it will continue to happen for millions of people. And it can certainly happen for you if you have the right path, you have the right focus and the right drive, and quite frankly, the confidence in yourself to become the best version of yourself.
I love it. Now, as you continue to progress through the years of coaching, there becomes a day where you're grabbing, I think it's lunch, and one of the people you're grabbing lunch with talks about how they're thinking about, doing some coaching for this Savannah Bananas baseball club, and talk a little bit about how you end up getting an opportunity to come down as well.
Absolutely. So I was visiting Nate Fish, who gave me that first job. I was visiting him in Cape Cod. He was coaching the YD Red Sox in the Cape Cod League, and one of his assistant coaches was Tyler Gillum. And Tyler Gillum, who, just jumping to the conclusion, Tyler and I now run the baseball department here for Fans First, and we coach the Bananas.
Yeah.
But Tyler, we connected because we both went to junior college. My junior college played his junior college. There was a local connection. He was from Oklahoma, so we had that Midwest thing going on. And we're at breakfast one morning, and he's like, you know what? I'm thinking about going to coach this team called the Savannah Bananas. Have you heard of them? And the guys at the table were like, no, no, yes, yes. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I think I saw something on ESPN. They had their first base coach who was dancing. Yeah, they're doing some things interesting. He's like, yeah, they're doing some things that nobody else has done. And that's really intriguing. I'm thinking about doing it. That conversation stops. 3 years later, um, Tyler's coaching their summer league team, or a couple of years later, he's coaching their summer league team. And the Bananas have this decision to, hey, we want to try to take this show on the road, and we need to make money in the in the off season because they were only a college summer league team, and so they said we're going to take the show on the road. Tyler, can you coach this team on this new thing called Banana Ball? And he couldn't at the time; he was still coaching at a college. So Tyler called my buddy Nate and said, "Hey, I think you're perfect for this. It's a low involvement, and come and coach." And so Nate said yes, and he brought me along to Banana Land, and that changed everything in my life, from identifying purpose to regaining happiness and joy and spreading it, and more importantly, helping somebody build something that really believed in their purpose in life. That's Jesse and Emily Cole, and helping them achieve that. And so, yeah, that breakfast, who knew that it would lead me to where I am today?
Yeah. Now, with, the Bananas and just talking about, the baseball, I'm sure in the baseball world, there were originally very differing opinions on, hey, what the heck are they doing? Like, is this, real baseball? And then there's other people that are like, wow, this is great. It's a whole different way of doing baseball, right? But there might have been some conflicting viewpoints of that today. It's just amazing, right? It's taken the social media world by storm. You guys have played in major arenas and sold them out, and it's just a whole different ball game. But talk a little bit about that progression for you and just how you've kind of seen, one, how it operates, but two, how it's been viewed outside by the public.
Yeah. When we started with the One City World Tour in 2021, we were merely just playing baseball with different rules, with this amazing entertainment injected into it. And um, the hardest thing to deal with was, oh, you had to dance on the field. I wasn't a guy who would just go dance in front of 5,000 people. That was the hardest thing to deal with. We were still playing baseball. It was kind of cool. It was new, and we were creating some happiness and joy for people. Throughout the years, when we went all in on Banana Ball and we started getting a little bit more popular, and social media hit, and you would see all the dancing and some of the things that was geared for social media, we got a lot of naysayers from the baseball world that it's not real baseball, it's scripted, all you do is dance, this is a flash in the pan, you're not going to be around tomorrow type of thing. And we saw everything, and we heard everything, and it didn't really fuel our fire. We just knew that we really believed in what we were doing at a very, very early stage. Jesse Cole, our owner, the man in the yellow tux, certainly believed in it. But everybody, that his team that he started assembling, they were all in alignment about creating the best possible fan experience through happiness, joy, by breaking down the wall between player and fan, by creating unforgettable moments. And that is where my purpose really got it really became closer in focus at that time. And yeah, listen, throughout the early years of the tour, we would go into ballparks, and we knew people were just kind of like snickering at us, and that was fine. We knew what we were doing was fun and great and a good positive thing, and we knew that when people would experience it, any of those naysayers, more than likely they would leave. If they didn't love it, they'd be like, hey, you know what? I'm not into the dancing, but that baseball's really good.
Yeah.
Or that was really cool. Or wow, look how much fun they had. Man, I want to do that. And
Yeah.
so we just knew that once we got people in the arena to watch it, that they would be turned. And so nowadays, people are opening up our doors from major league stadiums to NFL stadiums. Everybody wants us to come, and we have now reached this kind of universal acceptance. And there's still naysayers out there. It's not for everybody, but I feel like there literally is something for every person at one of our shows, whether it's good baseball, whether it's dancing, whether it's singing, whether it's laughing. The reality is what we do is we provide an experience
Hmm.
for families to come back to the ballpark and enjoy together. You
Okay.
don't just all have to be baseball fans. You don't all have to be into music. There literally is something for everybody. And when people leave, it's not about who won the game. It's not about the score. It's not about whether or not their favorite player went 0 for 4 or 4 for 4. It was all about how we made them feel and that thing that they got to experience. And that is when my purpose in life became so razor sharp that I'm here to make people happy, bring joy and smiles to people's faces, and give people an experience that very similar that I had at the College World Series. These core moments in life, and yeah, we're off and running now, so to say.
I love it. Now, in regards to running a baseball team, because there are other elements, right? It may not just be thinking who's the best player and bringing that person into the organization. There might be other elements that you're looking at, not only from like what they physically can do, but two, really how they fit the culture, right? That's so important to you guys. And, not to dog on professional athletics, but sometimes you say, we know this guy's going to be a terrible fit for the team, but he's really good. So let's get him, and hopefully the winning just counterbalances the badness of the culture. With what you guys are building from an outside perspective, it's like, hey, you know what? We might actually want the person that, even if there were 2 points lower in overall skill, but they're a heck of a lot better in what they're going to bring to the organization as a whole. That's a better move for us. And, I believe that when I see what I see about you guys. So talk a little bit about that from your standpoint of the operations, but also the team and, how you evaluate everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So we internally we operate very similar to a Major League Baseball organization with coaches and directors and recruiting departments and stats department, and all that stuff is fundamental to what we do. The evaluation of the players and the type of players we have is wildly unique than what Major League Baseball is putting together. Major League Baseball is trying to win World Series, and so they're trying to get the best possible talent to help them achieve that purpose. Maybe folks are not in alignment, maybe they don't like each other, but they're really good at baseball. And so that, like you said, it's this benefit burden analysis of like, how bad is it going to be in the clubhouse, but what can we get out of this person? And so for us, it's completely reverse. It's culture above everything. It's a fans first culture. It's a culture of wanting to create unforgettable moments and serve those fans as best as possible. And the fans are not just the people who show up to watch us play games. It's your fellow teammates. It's everybody in the front office. It's everybody who helps make this amazing thing move forward. So how can you be most fans first? And culture is everything. We talk about it literally every single day. We have check-in meetings with players about, hey, listen, you weren't out there signing autographs, or you kind of left early, or you're kind of like creating some friction here. But it all starts with getting the right players on the bus. And we've learned a lot over the 5 years that we've been doing this on the pro side of things. And the thing that I'm most proud about is we just don't say that we really care about culture. We actually prove it in our actions. And we do it by leading by example. But additionally, we don't tolerate if there's somebody kind of pulling against the grain, so to say. We take swift action to remove that person from the fold, because what we do is takes a lot of time, energy, effort, and people can get frustrated, people can get anxious, and when you have somebody pulling in the opposite direction, man, that could really slow down progress and take us away from our purpose. So um, not just from a baseball standpoint, but even the front office, if that's happening, somebody's not in alignment with our culture, it's totally fine. It is totally fine. It's we just I'm not going to have you working with us, and you can go do something else, and we'll help you find something else. It's not an adversarial thing. It's this is what you're signing up for. This is why the fans show up. They don't show up to watch you play baseball. They show up because you make them feel a certain way. Yes, you're a good baseball player, and that's very, very important. Very important. But that's only one piece of this large puzzle. And so culture is central. We live it, breathe it, deal with it every day. We lead by example. But at the end of the day, If you're not fans first and you don't really truly care about that person in the stands, it's probably not going to be for you. It's probably going to burn you out.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Adam, I want to say thanks so much for sharing your journey, man. It's so amazing to see all the things you've done and all the things you're going to continue to do. And we'll probably have to do this again in 2 years and talk about, all the growth and new amazing spots that you guys have traveled and played. So thanks so much again for being on.
Thanks for letting me share my story. And if anybody needs to reach out to me, you can reach out to me. I'll give you my email address. It's Viro, Viro at the Savannah Bananas. You can find me on social media, but I'm here to help. I'm here to share my story. I'm here to help people through tough times that they may be going through. So if there's anything I can do for you, Phil, for any of your listeners out there, I'm here for it.
Amazing.